Hey there guys, what is happening? Welcome to 2020, the first video of the year. I'm so pumped up to get this year rolling. Thank you for an incredible 2019. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. If not, yo, we still cool. We can hang out, play some guitar, you know. So today's video is something that I mentioned about making, and so many of you were like, please make this video. And I want to talk about, you know, kind of verifying if a vintage Strat, you know, I don't have experience with any of the other ones, just a Strat, is real or not. Because, you know, obviously now with the internet and all these different things, you can purchase vintage guitars all over the place, but there are a lot of little things to look out for. You know, a Strat is quite a bit different than a Les Paul because, you know, a Les Paul is one unit. You know, the neck doesn't just pop off of it. A Strat was meant to be, you know, disassembled very quickly and very easily, so there's a lot more to look out for. So I'm just gonna, you know, kind of cover some of the research that me and my wife did before we purchased my Strat. If you're not familiar with this guitar, this is a 1963 Fender Stratocaster that we got at the end of 2019, and there were just a lot of things that we looked into to make sure that this was real before we, you know, went ahead and got the guitar. So let's go ahead and jump on into these, and even if you're not looking for a vintage Strat, some of the stuff just might be interesting to you. It was really fascinating to me to learn about them, so let's go! So before we get going, I just wanted to throw this in here real quick, is that I'm going to link the website that we got a lot of this information from if you want to check it out yourself. I am merely scratching the surface. There is, like, you can seriously deep dive into a lot of this stuff if you want to. I'm just going to mention some kind of like quicker things that you can see, and if this stuff isn't here, it'll make you more cautious and make you research a little bit more. But like I said, I always encourage everyone, do your own research, find it out yourself. If I misspeak about anything, please correct me in the comments, and if you have other little things that you would like to throw in here, please add those as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Alright, now the first things first, I think if you're trying to buy a vintage Strat, the biggest thing, especially if you're online, like you've never played the guitar before, is the person has to have a lot of documentation of the actual, you know, insides of the guitar. That's really where all the nitty-gritty details are. There's some things you can tell from the outside. Like the first step, I think, to all of it is that the overall aging and wear of stuff should be consistent. You know, like if something looks too new to be old, it probably is. You know, I'm sure there are some rare cases, but overall, the general vibe of the guitar should be very consistent. Because if it is, you know, all original and all in one piece, it should have, you know, pretty much aged the same way. If you're buying one, you need to really be able to see the inside of it. I would not buy a vintage guitar if I could not see the inside, at least a Strat and a Tele, because there are a lot of really key signs that, you know, maybe someone who's trying to fake it, they're not going to do, or maybe someone who thinks they have an old guitar, and it could be something completely different, you know, that would, you know, extremely affect the value. So the inside of the guitar really just tells you everything. So the first thing I want to talk about is, I have pictures, thankfully, of the inside of mine, is router marks. Now, there are a lot of different marks on the inside of these old guitars, especially pre-CBS, because if you look at it, you should have, and I'll have pictures up to show you all this stuff, for one, what's called a worm route. So you have this on the guitar, it's kind of going up right through here, and then you'll have these circular routes kind of all over the place on the cavities of the guitar. And I thought that was really, really interesting, because it just shows that, you know, the older ones before CNCs and all that kind of stuff were, you know, what we have nowadays, which, you know, in all honesty, make a much, on paper, better product. I like the human aspect of a lot of this stuff. And the other thing is, you'll notice that none of these lines are like perfectly straight. None of it's perfectly done, because it was, you know, all done by people. So if you're buying an old vintage Strat and you know, the inside routes just look perfect, like they've been cut out with a CNC, odds are they have been, and it's not an old one, because I haven't seen any old Strat that had just perfectly routed out, you know, pickup cavities or anything of that kind. So that's, you know, a really big thing to look at. Look for your router marks. Look for just overall inconsistencies in the body, the way it's routed. You know, nothing should be perfectly routed out, and that doesn't affect anything. But, you know, that's just little things like that to look at, and that's why you have to see the inside, because the pickguard is really covering up all the details that we need to get to. So we're going to keep focusing on the body here for a second, because there is going to be an actual date on your body. Now this is something that was just written in pencil or pen, which could easily have been sanded off and written back on there. So I really don't think that this is a end-all discussion if it has a back date on it. So mine does. Mine has of course the 63 on it, and it's back here behind your cavity, where your springs and all that stuff are. So you can't see it on mine right now, except I have pictures of it. But I have 5 springs on mine and the hardtail, dock to the body, so I can't actually use the tremolo. That's why I couldn't use the trem on that beginning SRV piece. But that's just another way to kind of tell is the inside. On the back of it is the back date. Now, underneath your pick guard, what's really interesting is you will have nail holes. Now, these are what they did when they were, painting the guitar. So you'll have not only the holes for the screws, but nail holes in there that they would put these little nails in, and you'll have them overall kind of in the same areas, but they're also kind of all over the place. So I thought that was really, really fascinating. So they would put little nails in it and hold the body up. One of the last components, this is just what someone had told me, one of the last components that really go into a guitar are your electronics. So if your pots, now mine did not have the original pots. We have since then replaced the pots with a stack pull 63 pots, which have been what it would have came with, and an original 3-way switch. These will date, and tell you the dates of the actual pots on there. That's the nice thing about a lot of this stuff is, like the mechanical side of it, there's serial numbers, there's dates, hidden inside the serial numbers, so you can document a lot of that stuff, probably easier than the body itself. Now the next area, of course, that I want to really focus on is the neck. Now the neck is super important because, not that the body's not important, because obviously it holds the pickups and all that stuff, but we have the most contact with the neck, and these necks are just really, really special. So on a 63, for example, is you're not going to have that big slab hunk of rosewood anymore. Now that was something they changed, I think in 62, late 62, 63. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. To this more laminate fingerboard, which is a much just thinner piece of rosewood on here. It's still, some people say there's a sound to that, that the thicker slab boards sound a little bit different. I think the biggest kind of drawback to that is if you are, getting fretboard work done, you really have to watch if they're planing your fingerboard or something like that, because you don't have as much rosewood to actually sand away to get to that maple. So you have to make sure you take it to someone who is going to be super, super careful with that, because you don't want to wear through that rosewood into the maple. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happens with the neck. So you should have clay dots in here. Now this is something that to me is a very iconic look to a pre-CVS Strat. It was something that I've always got my attention. I remember my buddy Steve from Boston. Steve, I can't remember which year's I think it was a 56 reissue. Steve, if you watch this, maybe you can chime in. But I remember he just sent me a picture of the neck, and I saw the clay. I'm like, dude, clay dots. What do you have? And a lot of people have commented on asking what are those fret markers? And this, like I said, they're clay dots. You can still get them on custom shops and that kind of thing. But it's a very, very iconic look. Now, obviously, up here, you have a logo, and there are different logos that Fender has used. They're all relatively close, but like I said, I have pictures, and I'll put them on the screen. And you can kind of see how it's different. The Stratocaster at one point got bigger. You have the spaghetti style. Of course, in the 70s, they switched and went to a much bigger logo simply because of advertising. They wanted the name to be seen. So that was and that's why they had the bigger headstock. It was all marketing. Like I said, you can see on the screen the different styles, and you actually have different pat numbers on there as well. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is I think the hardtails did not have this pat number, because this pat number is for your synchronized tremolo, and I believe they didn't. I don't think they had those on the hardtail, because obviously it didn't have a bridge, but I think they didn't put that on there. But you still have the custom contoured body with synchronized tremolo. That's always been another one of those things that I loved on old Strat, with synchronized tremolo, and when you see the numbers on there, you still today have the custom contour body, and that's just another thing to look for. Now, the tuners are also something to kind of keep in mind, because there are different tuners. It depends on how like crazy you are about wanting your guitar to be all original. That was like one of our things. We wanted the guitar to be as close to original as possible. So on here we have single line Kluson Deluxe tuners. Now there are double lines. They've changed a lot. The one way to really tell about your tuners is to take it off. You're going to have different pat numbers in there, and just different, a more fine-tooth way of telling if they are original. Now I didn't do that to ours. We did not see the inside of them. They seem correct to me. I mean, they're single line Kluson Deluxe tuners, so the wear seems accurate on them. All right, now the neck stamp, or the neck date on it. Now this is something that was really important to me, because there were some we looked at that there were 63s that didn't have that, or maybe had been refinished over, and we just kind of stayed away from them, because I thought it was really crucial to the guitar to have that neck date on there. And one of the things that's really cool is the letter that's on there. So like mine's 63, and then there's a B on it. Now the B stands for the actual nut width of the guitar. So B was essentially the normal standard size. It was 1 5/8. If you have anything other than a B, you have something that was a little bit, more rare. It was a custom option basically, and I thought that was kind of a cool factor. So mine is essentially, I think they said like 90% of the Strats had a B, but there were the rare ones that didn't have a B, and those would have been essentially like custom ordered, different nut widths and that kind of vibe on them. But I thought that was really cool. Now in 59, in the earlier Strats, they didn't stamp them like they did on this one. They hand wrote the date on there with pencil or pen, whatever they used. But in 59, there's a period where there is no neck dates, because a customer complained that one of the workers had written an obscenity in the neck pocket where they put the date. So then they just didn't have anyone write them anymore. And then of course they eventually had a stamp, which is what they started using a little bit later on, and then they didn't have to worry about that anymore. But I thought that was pretty funny. So if you could have a 59 with no neck date, and it's totally legit. So like I said, there's just a lot of research you have to do on them. Now this backplate right here is kind of an interesting thing, because Fender would put the serial numbers on your neck plate. Now, obviously why this could be an issue is someone could take this neck plate off and stick it on another guitar and just be like, oh, this is a 59, this is a 63, whatever it is, and sell something that is not true. So you really can't base much off of the serial number on your backplate. That is simply just an added little like bonus confirmation to make sure that it lines up right. So like I said, for example, mine's a 63. So basically the serial number should fall between 93 and I think it was at 99. Yeah. And mine is 97. So we know that the neck plate is correct. Now, supposedly they just had bins of these neck plates made. So there was really no systematic order to the way they were put on a guitar. It was just a bin of neck plates, and you pulled one out that had numbers on them. Boom, done. So this particular one is called a pre-L series. Now, if you don't know what that means, later in 63, Fender began putting an L in the front of the serial numbers. Now, that was actually a mistake. It was supposed to be a 1, and I believe the paper, when they sent in the order form, was read incorrectly. It looked like an L, and that's what started the L series. So they just ran with it at that point. And so that's why that doesn't really mean anything other than it's just your serial number will have an L on it, or it will not. It kind of dictates, is your guitar an early 63 or later 63. So mine's an earlier one, but there's no like tonal difference to the L. Maybe there is. Is there the L tone? And there you guys have it. And like I said, I will link to one of the main websites that we used that had a lot of this information on it. It's always just best do your own research, but I thought I'd make this video because it could be helpful to someone who's looking into getting one of these guitars. And if I've given any misinformation, please correct me in the comments, or if you have other little tidbits that you want to throw in here, throw that in here as well. Other than that, I'm gonna bounce out of here. I'm done talking about it. I'm just gonna go play the guitar. So hope you guys have a wonderful new year, and I will see you all Friday. Peace out, homies. Keep on rocking. Whoop!